Okay, I'm going to just talk briefly about cropping an image in Photoshop. You can crop images in any other picture editing software, such as Preview on Mac. But if you have Photoshop open and you're doing any sort of recoloring or, of course, resizing for web, you'll probably want to crop your image. I always take a little bit more off my image when I open in Photoshop, meaning that I take pictures that are sometimes too big. It's better to have more information than less, and then you can always take away. So when I open Photoshop, fifth down here is my crop tool. And sometimes it's not automatically set there, or maybe somebody else who last used the program had maybe the slice tool on. So you just click and drag out to the right and pull the crop tool open. And what I'm going to do is just kind of bring a bounding box around here. Cool thing about Photoshop is it kind of grays out what you're not going to have in your image. You have to ask yourself what's the subject and what's important and what isn't. So in this case, these trucks over here are not important, and so I'm going to crop them out. Maybe this truck is important for scale, so we can see what this grain elevator looks like. Of course, this silo over here will kind of give us that same visual comparison. Do I want a long, tall photo like this? Maybe, but I kind of want it to be more rectangular. A convention in photography, of course, is the rectangle, but too much of a rectangle, too thin of a rectangle, might make for an awkward photo. So let's bring it back out here, and I'll actually put in this truck. I'll leave the truck there. So now that I've cropped it down, I hit return and it edits it. I have a much nicer picture. I have a road that goes up to the grain elevator. I have a truck that is facing in. It's facing toward the center of the image, so it's leading my eye toward the center. There's nothing in this image that's really pulling my eye away from the photo, or I'm sorry, away from the subject. So if you had this truck and it were facing to the left here, you'd probably want to crop it out, because all it's doing is telling us to look the other direction. Unless that's what you're looking for and you want your viewer to be kind of guessing what's not in the picture. But in this case, you have a nice relationship between this truck, these two buildings, and this grain elevator. I'm going to zoom in here using Command plus or Control plus on the PC. And one thing that's really kind of bugging me in this photo is this wire here. If you're on CS5 and you pull up your magic wand tool, that's 4 down here. Sometimes you have the quick selection tool, and you can also use that. You can select something that's real obvious like this, and let me zoom out to make sure it hasn't selected anything else, and that looks pretty good. You get what they call the marching ants, or it's a marquee, and that will select that one individual object. Of course, you can always go up here and change the tolerance and tell it to have more tolerance or less if you're trying to do really controlled selections. Say you also want to select something else, you hold down Shift and it will select more. And I'm going to do Command Z to undo that selection. So at this point, if you just hit delete, and if you're on the latest version of Photoshop, it'll give you this fill option. And you're going to want to fill it using content aware. What that does is it kind of guesses what you want to fill in that wire with. We're going to hit OK, and we'll see what happens. If I hit Command D and take away my selection, you can see what it tried to do. It kind of got rid of most of that wire. Didn't get rid of all of it. So I'm going to do this again. Select Content Aware. And it's not really filling in much of the rest of it. It's not a perfect tool, but it does a pretty good job, I think. The last thing I'm going to do is come over here to my clone stamp tool. And we can change the brush size with the left and right bracket. I'm going to bring my brush size down a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample some of this sky from right below where my brush is. I'm going to go down 2 more clicks here. And holding down the Alt Option key, I'm going to click, and it brings up that little target. And it gives us a preview of what it's going to do. And see what it's doing? That little X that's underneath my stamp tool? It's telling us that it's sampling right below. And that works great until you come into something like this here. And you can see now it's sampling part of whatever's right below it again, and in this case it's not perfect. So I'll have to come over here, Alt, click, change that a little bit. Same here. Maybe as well here and here. The more you do this, the better you'll get at it. It takes a little bit of practice, and so what I'm going to do is change the opacity down to 50. I'll click right here and kind of fill in a little bit. Now, people who use Photoshop a lot, myself included, I can tell if something's been clone stamped and it hasn't been done very well. But for our purposes, we're just learning, just practicing it. We'll get better at it. This is effectively the same thing as fixing a blemish on a photo of yourself or of, say, a model or something like that. I'm going to come in over here, take the top of that thing off as well, zoom out, and that looks much better.